Welcome to again me talking about the Bible. Hopefully, not in a way that you have already experienced, and I mean that not worse, but hopefully a little bit more clear. One thing that I've learned in the past, I don't know how many years, is that when it comes to the Bible or religion in general, people get very uncomfortable. And that's interesting for me because in the country where I spent most of my time studying theology and talking about religion and all that, it also made people uncomfortable, but it made them in a way that we always had very great conversations about it. And right now I'm living in a country where it's kind of more taboo to talk about it, and I'm missing that. So that's why I imagine having conversations with you guys, and I end up shooting videos about it because it's fun. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Julia Hartmeier. I live in Switzerland. I studied for the last 10 years, 5 years of theology, 5 years of psychology. I'm all ready for life. No, I'm not. I'm so scared. I don't know what will happen to me in the next months. But that's another topic. This year, I took upon myself to start the challenge reading the Bible again, cover to cover. Last week, I've read from chapter 41 of Genesis to chapter 12, almost 11, of Exodus. Those are books 1 and 2 of Moses, traditionally attributed to Moses writing them. I would like to say this was a fun read, but, well, okay, it isn't fun in the haha kind of way, but it's fun in the kind of what am I reading kind of way, which is fun in another way. Some people have weird senses of humor, and I'm definitely one of those people. Just ask my husband. I've talked last week a little bit about how I'm interpreting or seeing what's happening in a big arch of the story. I didn't go into detail into every story. And that's where I said that it seems to me that the Bible starts a story about two characters, and one of them is God, and the other one is humans in general. And with humans in general, I think that is the topic of Genesis, kind of. It also, if you look at it a bit more literally science way, you can see that there are parts of it that generally say this is the book of the generation of Adam, and then the book of the generation of Abraham, and so on, until literally to the end, where it finishes with these are the sons of Israel. That for me just generally gives me this understanding from what I know from the literal critic education that I had, is that in this book the focus is on the story of the generations from Adam, to who is the first human in according to the story, to the sons of Israel, who are a very important actor in the rest of the Bible. It also has this very interesting line of God making differences between different kind of things. Like, just in the beginning you have Genesis 1 and 2, which in a very poetic way talks about creation, and in creation what he does is separates light from darkness and waters from land and stuff like that. And this is also kind of weirdly the motif of the whole book of Genesis, where there's always this separation. And like, obviously when you read that, it's why is this so important? I asked myself, and I'm pretty sure others have asked themselves as well. And as I was reading also today in the morning, I was like, this must be something important because it's repeated so many times. But I'm waiting to find out what's the important about this. As I'm going through the whole scriptures, see what else pops up as a big topic. Okay, so one of the things that I really need to put out there for you guys is, and ladies, is so important for you to know that if you've never had experience reading the Bible, if you've never had experience of someone explaining it to you, if you've never just weren't always a part of the tradition of Christian faith or Judaic faith, which are traditions that always explain and retell the stories, then if you are planning to read the Bible cover to cover for yourself without any kind of external help, you are going to have a very hard time. And I'm not putting in any kind of way your intellectual skills and in question, nor in any kind of other skills or your knowledge or general knowledge. I'm just saying, as I read them, I realize that these stories were not meant to be read in a vacuum. Even as I went through the passages of Exodus that describe the degrees of God as what he said to his people as he was helping them escape the Pharaoh in Egypt, I realized even in those stories, God's commandment is that as the generations pass, they should always repeat every year the actions and the stories to each other, so as to remember what this really means and what is this in remembrance of. And I think that is something of huge importance when it comes to the Bible, because the Bible was, and especially the Old Testament, but the New Testament as well, they were never meant to be read in isolation only. And you hear a lot about personal Bible study and having time for yourself and reading the Bible, and that's great. I don't have something to say against that. What I think is that we as humans were created to live in community and to make sense of our stories in community. And actually that has really many ramifications that I see in different aspects of the life. But I think this is also how religion or faith works. Now, that's just something that I really wanted you to know. And if you're interested for me to make a video about just talking about this community aspect of not just faith but life, subscribe and like my videos. Okay, so this is something that I want you to know. If you ever are in a situation to read scriptures and you feel like this makes no sense, you are very much okay with that, because you were not meant to make sense of them alone. So if you're really interested in understanding scriptures, I advise you to get other people who maybe also have a little bit more experience than you, and read the Bible together. I'm not saying go and listen to what the other is teaching you if they are not a teacher, but I'm saying go at it as a community and see what you're finding out as a community. That's my biggest advice for everybody reading the Bible. Back to Exodus, right? The main point that I am taking away from my reading of Genesis 41 till Exodus 11, those are the chapters, is that, interestingly, as Genesis finishes with the story of God and people who somehow end, like through election and separation, end up being the sons of Israel as the definition of the people of God. When we leave Genesis, we don't just have these two actors, we have a third one. We have Israel, we have Egypt, which is the new actor, and we have God. And the reason I'm saying these are three actors, even though basically they are two peoples, Egyptian peoples, and the descendants of the 12 sons of Israel, and different individuals within those peoples, like the Pharaoh and his advisors and his mages, and Moses and Aaron and his and their sister Miriam, and Moses' wife, who does something kind of weird. We somehow get the feeling from the way the story is told that for the purposes of the bigger picture, we have three actors. And that, I think, is something to be considered as a way of understanding the story, how it goes. Because the way the story goes is that Egypt used to be very friendly and very, like, a very good host, and very thankful to the help of Israel. Way back in the end of Genesis, and now suddenly, many generations later, so it's basically not suddenly, but in Genesis, in Exodus, in the beginning, we find a very abusive Egypt. So again, this idea of abuse of power comes back in the Bible, and it comes back so strongly, and it's not from the all-powerful God where this abuse of power comes from, but from someone else who is supposed to be on the same level as Israel, the way at least we modern humans understand how nations and people should be with each other. But what Egypt does is enslave the Israelites, according to the story. By the way, I feel this is such a huge disclosure. I am not talking about Egypt and Israel as the nations of today. No. I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is using the words that the Bible uses, just so I don't put everything in other words. And I'm talking about the context that the Bible is talking about, which is many hundreds of centuries ago. And so I'm talking about them as kind of like individuals, because it feels that the story is leading us to understand it that way. So we have these two peoples, two characters, and the one is enslaving the other one, and this one calls out to God. And the story begins when God says, "I heard you." And this is where the narrative actually becomes a saving story, a story of liberation, a liberation story, where this one doesn't want to let go of having slaves as a cheap labor force. Sound familiar? And this one is suffering, but is not suffering in silence, as we would say, or many times advised to good people, just suffer in silence. What they do is they speak up, but they speak up to the authority that they know that has the power to liberate them, and that is, for them, is God. And God responds to that and devises a plan to save them. I think, like, obviously, I'm not here to read the Bible as if like a complete clean sheet. I know what I know about the interpretive layers of this story. And I don't know all of them, but I know that this particular story plays a huge role in the rest of scriptures, and especially in the New Testament. So I'm just going to leave that there because I want to get to each story as the Bible comes to them. But I, for now, and my resonance at this moment with the story is that I feel like it started with one who created different kind of things, and then he created gegenüber, as you would say in German, as someone to have in front of you, someone to have a relationship with. And then we get to a third one. And at this point, even though we know that God created every person and all of us are equal in front of God, at this point we don't understand Egypt as the creation of God. It's just kind of there, like a power, and a power that is abusive and is domineering. And God is not happy about that. And God is not happy about his people, his creation, being under foreign occupation. And I actually think this is something of a very, very central theme of the Bible. But as I said, again, I will get there when I get there to put this all in perspective of the whole Bible and what that means. I just found it very, very interesting to see it so so early in the story of the Bible, where the narrative of liberation actually starts. And it also helped me put in perspective my ideas about God's power and his abuse of power. It does feel different when you read about someone who really does enslave people, and to define that as abuse of power, versus just someone who really doesn't want to share what or seems to not want to share what's on his mind or in his power. That just sounds like boundaries to me. And yes, the other thing that is really forming in me in a way is that apparently the Bible will never become something very, very comfortable to read, because there's always this character who is so unpredictable, who is so powerful in a good and also in a very scary way. And also because it is just so, it's wrapped in mystery. This is what I mostly feel at the moment, is that you have these stories, but they don't go off, kind of. It's like a prelude to something, and they are stories in themselves, and I recognize that that they have in their own way their own kind of closure. But because as you read them, you get this sense of, why are you telling this to me? It feels, it really gives me this feeling of, whenever, like for example, whenever I read a book and there is something that just really doesn't add up for all of it, and then in the last 10 pages you understand, because it's that. So that's how this beginning of the Bible makes me feel, which I didn't hope for, but it's really nice that it's working like that. It gives me this feeling of, here are stories, and here are stories, and there are stories, and I don't really see how they work together. But I'm hoping, and I think in the end I will get a more holistic picture of all of them. So these are my reflections a little bit as I go through the Bible again for this week. I honestly really hope that they inspire you in some ways. If you're someone who reads the Bible and never thought about the stories in this way, I hope that it helps you put things in new perspectives, that it helps you understand these stories better, to improve your relationship with God and with the Bible as well. If you're someone who has never read the Bible or tried to read it, but again these stories didn't make any sense, I hope this also helps you a little bit just to put things in perspective and hopefully help you find your own answers to your own questions.